In the lush lands of Nigeria, where the sun kisses the earth with golden rays and the wind whispers ancient tales, two great kingdoms stood tall and proud. To the west, the kingdom of Oyo, home of the Yoruba people, its borders marked by the flowing river Ogun. To the east, the kingdom of Arochukwu, land of the Igbo, protected by the dense forests of the Cross River. For generations, these two kingdoms had been locked in a bitter feud, their hatred for each other as deep as the roots of the Iroko tree and as vast as the Nigerian sky. The cause of their enmity was lost to time, buried beneath years of blood and tears. In Oyo, King Akintola sat upon his throne, a man whose very name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. His dark eyes gleamed with cunning, and his lips often curled into a cruel smile. By his side stood Queen Esther, a woman whose beauty was matched only by her ruthlessness. Together they ruled Oyo with iron fists, their subjects both fearing and reversing them. "My love," Queen Esther purred one evening as they sat in their private chambers, "I have heard whispers that the dogs of Arochukwu are planning to expand their hunting grounds into our territory." King Akintola's face darkened with rage. "They dare! After we crushed their pathetic attempts last harvest season." He slammed his fist on the armrest of his chair. "We shall remind them of the might of Oyo." In the kingdom of Arochukwu, King Albert was no less fearsome. His broad shoulders and scarred face told tales of battles won and enemies vanquished. Queen Azuka, his wife, was known for her sharp tongue and sharper mind. Many said she was the true power behind the throne, her strategies often leading Arochukwu to victory. "Husband," Queen Azuka said, her voice like honey laced with poison, "our spies report that Oyo is weakening. Their crops have not fared well this season. Perhaps it is time we strike and claim what is rightfully ours." King Albert's eyes glittered with malice. "Yes, my dear. We shall crush them once and for all. The name of Arochukwu will strike terror into their hearts for generations to come." But amidst the hatred and scheming of their elders, two young hearts beat to a different rhythm. Prince Moji of Oyo, a young man of 28 years, with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that held the warmth of the afternoon sun, had grown weary of the constant conflict. Though trained in the arts of war since childhood, Moji's soul yearned for peace and knowledge. In Arochukwu, Princess Kambili, a maiden of 26 summers, with hair as dark as midnight and a smile that could light up the darkest cave, harbored similar desires. She had learned the healing arts in secret, dreaming of a day when her skills could be used to mend the wounds between the kingdoms rather than tend to those inflicted in battle. Fate, in its infinite wisdom and cruel humor, decided to weave the threads of their lives together on a day when the sun hid behind dark clouds and the air hummed with the promise of rain. Prince Moji had ventured beyond the borders of Oyo, seeking rare herbs for his experiments in medicine. Disguised as a common trader, he made his way through the neutral lands that separated the two kingdoms. It was here, in a small clearing by a bubbling stream, that he first laid eyes on Princess Kambili. She too had left the safety of her kingdom, driven by a similar quest for knowledge. Dressed in simple clothes, her royal heritage hidden, Kambili knelt by the stream, carefully examining the plants that grew along its banks. Moji approached, his footsteps masked by the sound of the running water. "Greetings, fellow herbalist," he called out, his voice friendly but cautious. Kambili startled, rising quickly and turning to face the stranger. For a moment neither spoke, both caught in the unexpected gaze of the other. There was something in Moji's eyes, a gentleness that Kambili had never seen in the men of her kingdom. And in Kambili's smile, Moji found a warmth that melted the ice around his heart. "Greetings," Kambili replied, her voice soft but strong. "I did not expect to find another soul in these parts. Are you also in search of medicinal plants?" Moji nodded, moving closer but careful not to appear threatening. "Indeed I am. I've heard tales of a rare flower that grows in these lands, said to ease the pain of old wounds." Camberley's eyes lit up with interest. The blue starflower. I too have come in search of it. They say it only blooms under the light of the full moon. As they spoke, the clouds above began to disperse, allowing rays of sunlight to pierce through. The light danced on the surface of the stream, creating a dazzling display that seemed to mirror the spark igniting between the two young royals. For hours they talked, sharing knowledge of plants and healing, carefully avoiding any mention of their true identities or their kingdoms. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, both realized they must return to their homes. I have enjoyed our conversation, Moji said, his eyes lingering on Cambili's face. Perhaps we might meet again, to continue our discussion of healing arts. Cambili hesitated, her heart pulling her in one direction while her mind warned of danger. But the warmth in Moji's eyes and the connection she felt overruled her caution. Yes, I would like that. Shall we meet here again in 7 days' time? Moji agreed, and with reluctant farewells, they parted ways, each heading back to their respective kingdoms. Neither could have known that with this chance encounter, they had set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of both Oyo and Arochukwu. As night fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, two figures moved through the shadows on the outskirts of Oyo. One, tall and wrapped in dark robes adorned with fetishes and charms, was Babalawo Ogunla, the kingdom's most feared herbalist and seer. The other, hunched and leaning on a gnarled staff, was Nemagbafo, the wise woman of Arochukwu. These two, unknown to their respective rulers, met in secret, drawn together by visions of a future that could bring either salvation or destruction to both kingdoms. "You have seen it too, old friend," Babalawo Ogunla asked, his voice a low rumble. Nene Magbafo nodded, her wrinkled face grave. "The spirits are restless. Change is coming, carried on the wings of young love, but whether it will bring peace or war, life or death, that remains unclear." Babalawo Ogunla sighed heavily. "We must tread carefully. The hatred between our people runs deep. One wrong move could ignite a fire that will consume us all." As they spoke, discussing the portents and signs they had observed, neither was aware of a third presence. Hidden in the branches of a nearby tree, a figure cloaked in shadows listened intently, its eyes gleaming with malevolent interest. Zurak, the evil herbalist of Arochukwu, had long sought ways to increase his power and influence. In the whispered words of the two elders, he sensed an opportunity. Whatever was coming, he vowed to twist it to his advantage, regardless of the cost to others. The seeds of both love and conflict had been sown. In the palaces of Oyo and Arochukwu, Kings Akintola and Albert plotted against each other, unaware that their children's hearts now beat in unison. In the shadows, forces both good and evil prepared to play their parts in the unfolding drama. And somewhere between the two kingdoms, under a sky filled with stars, two young souls dreamed of each other, their forbidden love beginning to bloom like a delicate flower in the harshest of environments. As the sun rose over the kingdom of Oyo, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Prince Moji found himself unable to concentrate on his princely duties. His mind kept wandering back to the clearing by the stream, to the gentle smile and warm eyes of the young woman he had met. For 7 days, he went about his routines mechanically, his heart counting down the moments until he could see her again. In the royal court, King Akintola noticed his son's distraction. "Moji," he barked, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "What ails you, boy? Your mind seems to be elsewhere when we discuss the defense of our kingdom." Moji straightened, forcing himself to focus on his father's words. "Forgive me, father. I have not been sleeping well. Concerns for our people weigh heavily on my mind." Queen Esther's eyes narrowed suspiciously. She knew her son well, and this behavior was unlike him. "Perhaps," she said, her voice smooth as silk, We should consult with Babalawo Ogunla. He may have some remedy to clear your mind, my son. Moji felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of the feared herbalist. No, mother, that won't be necessary. I assure you, I am well. Meanwhile, in Arachukwu, Princess Kambili faced similar scrutiny. Her usual enthusiasm for court politics had dimmed, replaced by a dreamy distraction that did not go unnoticed by her sharp-eyed mother. Kambili, Queen Azuka said one evening as they sat in the royal gardens, "You seem different of late. Has something happened that I should know about?" Kambili plastered a smile on her face, her heart racing. "Nothing, mother. I've simply been engrossed in my studies of our kingdom's history. It's fascinating to learn of our proud lineage." King Albert, overhearing the conversation, laughed heartily. "That's my girl, always thirsting for knowledge. You'll make a fine queen one day, with a mind as sharp as your mother's and the strength of your father's arm." Kambili's smile faltered slightly at her father's words. The weight of her royal duties had never felt heavier than in that moment, as she thought of the kind-eyed stranger she was to meet again. The appointed day arrived, and both Moji and Kambili made their excuses to slip away from their respective palaces. They met again in the clearing, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I feared you might not come," Moji said, his eyes drinking in the sight of Kambili. She smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "And I feared the same as you. But here we are." They spent the afternoon talking, sharing stories of their lives, carefully edited to hide their true identities, and exploring the area around the stream. As the sun began to set, Moji reached out and took Kambili's hand in his. "I know we've only met twice," he said softly, "but I feel as though I've known you all my life. There's a connection between us that I can't explain." Kambili felt her heart skip a beat. "I feel it too," she whispered. "It's as if the gods themselves have brought us together." As they stood there, hands clasped and eyes locked, neither was aware of the figure watching them from the shadows of the trees. Zurak, the evil herbalist of Arachukwu, had followed Kambili, his curiosity piqued by her unusual behavior. His eyes glittered with malevolent glee as he observed the budding romance. "Well, well," he murmured to himself, "what have we here? The princess and a stranger. Oh, the possibilities this presents." Over the next few weeks, Moji and Kambili continued to meet in secret, their love growing stronger with each encounter. They shared their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for a future free from the hatred that consumed their kingdoms. But as their love blossomed, so too did the tensions between Oyo and Arachukwu. King Akintola, spurred on by Queen Esther's whispered urgings, began to increase patrols along the border. King Albert, not to be outdone, responded by fortifying Arachukwu's defenses. Wanakoda, in the midst of this escalating conflict, Babalawo Ogunla and Nemungbafo continued their clandestine meetings. They could sense the shifting tides of fate, but the future remained clouded to their second sight. "The spirits are restless," Nemungbafo said one night as they met in a hidden grove. "I fear that great change is coming, whether we will or not." Babalawo Ogunla nodded gravely. "I have cast the divination bones, and they speak of love and death, of peace born from great sacrifice. But the path to this future is shrouded in mist." As they spoke, a cold wind swept through the grove, causing the leaves to rustle ominously. Both elders felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "We must be vigilant," Babalawo Ogunla said. "Forces are at work here that we do not fully understand." Meanwhile, Zurak was busy weaving his own plans. He had recognized Prince Moji for who he was, and saw in this forbidden romance an opportunity to sow chaos and increase his own power. "My king," he said one day, bowing low before King Albert's throne, "I have had a vision of betrayal and danger to our beloved princess." King Albert leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Speak, Zurak. What have you seen?" "I saw Princess Kambili in the arms of an enemy, my lord. An enemy from Oyo who seeks to steal her away and weaken our kingdom." Queen Azuka gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Impossible. Our daughter would never— The vision does not lie, my queen, Zurak said smoothly. But fear not. With your permission, I shall use my arts to protect the princess and reveal this traitor. As Zurak's poison began to spread in Arochukwu, Moji and Kambili remained blissfully unaware of the gathering storm. In their secret meetings, they had begun to dream of a future together, of finding a way to bridge the gap between their peoples. If only our parents could see what we see, Kambili said one day as they sat by the stream. That love is stronger than hatred. That peace is possible if we only reach out to one another. Moji squeezed her hand, his heart full of both love and sorrow. Perhaps one day, my love, but for now we must be careful. If anyone were to discover us— He left the thought unfinished, but both knew the danger they faced. Discovery would mean more than just the end of their romance. It could ignite a war that would consume both their kingdoms. As the sun set on another secret meeting, Moji and Kambili shared a tender kiss, neither wanting to part. Unbeknownst to them, this moment of love was observed by two very different pairs of eyes. Hidden in the bushes, Nene Mugbafo watched with a mixture of joy and trepidation. She recognized both young royals and understood immediately the significance of their union. "Oh, children," she whispered, "may the gods protect you, for the path ahead is fraught with danger." And from his vantage point in the trees, Zurak observed the scene with cruel satisfaction. "Well, well, princess," he muttered, "you've made this almost too easy. Now let the game truly begin." As Moji and Kambili reluctantly parted ways, returning to their respective kingdoms, the air seemed to thicken with tension. The seeds of love had taken root, but so too had the seeds of conflict. The future of both Oyo and Arochukwu now hung in the balance, with the fate of two young lovers at its center. In the palaces of both kingdoms, plans were being laid. King Akintola and Queen Esther discussed strategies to finally crush Arochukwu, while King Albert and Queen Azuka, influenced by Zurak's whispers, began to suspect treachery within their own walls. And as night fell over the land, the stars seemed to shine with a foreboding light, as if they too could sense the approaching storm. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when the first whispers began. In the bustling markets of Oyo, vendors paused their haggling to exchange furtive glances and hushed words. Something was amiss in the royal palace, they said. The prince, once so devoted to his duties, now wandered with his head in the clouds. "I saw him yesterday," an old fruit seller confided to her neighbor. "He was smiling to himself like a man bewitched. It's not natural, I tell you." Similar murmurs echoed through the streets of Arochukwu. The princess, known for her sharp mind and regal bearing, had been seen sneaking out of the palace grounds. Some swore they'd spotted her in the neutral lands between the kingdoms, though none could say why. In the Oyo palace, King Akintola summoned his most trusted advisors. "Our spies report increased activity along the Arochukwu border," he growled, his fist clenching around a scroll. "What are those dogs planning?" Queen Esther, her eyes glinting like polished obsidian, leaned forward. "Perhaps, my love, it's time we struck first. Crush them before they can bare their fangs." As the war council debated strategies, Prince Moji stood silent, his thoughts far from the chamber. He remembered Kambili's laugh, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her dreams for peace. How could he reconcile his love for her with his duty to Oyo? Across the border, Princess Kambili faced her own internal struggle. She knelt in the palace garden, pretending to tend the herbs while her mind raced. How long could she keep her secret? And what would happen if her father discovered her love for the enemy prince? "You seem troubled, child," a raspy voice interrupted her thoughts. Kambili looked up to see Nemugbafo, the wise woman, watching her with knowing eyes. It's nothing, Nene," Kambili stammered, but the old woman wasn't fooled. "The spirits whisper of great change," Nene Mugbafo said, her gnarled hand grasping Kambili's arm. Love blooms in unexpected places, but so too does danger. Be wary, princess. Not all who claim to serve Arachukwu have pure hearts. Before Kambili could respond, a commotion erupted at the palace gates. Zurak, the kingdom's feared herbalist, strode into the courtyard, his dark robes billowing behind him. "My king," he called out, his voice carrying an undercurrent of malicious glee. "I bring news of great importance." King Albert emerged from the palace, Queen Azuka at his side. "Speak, Zurak. What have you discovered?" Zurak's eyes gleamed as he bowed low. "Treachery, my lord. A plot against Arachukwu, orchestrated by none other than the kingdom of Oyo." As Zurak spun his web of lies and half-truths, mixing just enough reality with his fabrications to make them believable, Kambili felt her world begin to crumble. She watched her father's face darken with rage, her mother's eyes narrow with suspicion. "And the princess?" Queen Azuka asked, her voice sharp as a blade. "What role does she play in this treachery?" Zurak's smile was a thing of nightmares. "Ah, but that is the cruelest cut of all, my queen. It seems our beloved princess has been compromised." Kambili's heart stopped. How could he know? How could anyone have discovered her secret meetings with Moji? As the accusations flew and the royal court of Arachukwu descended into chaos, a similar scene unfolded in Oyo. Babalawo Ogunla, the kingdom's revered seer, stood before King Akintola and Queen Esther. "The bones speak of betrayal," he intoned, his voice heavy with foreboding. "A love that could bring peace or spark a war that will consume us all." Prince Moji, standing in the shadows of the throne room, felt the weight of the seer's words settle on his shoulders like a lead cloak. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that his secret was no longer safe. As night fell over both kingdoms, tensions reached a fever pitch. In Oyo, King Akintola ordered the borders sealed, preparing for what he believed was an imminent attack. In Arachukwu, King Albert raged against the perceived betrayal, calling for blood. And in a small clearing between the two warring lands, two young lovers met for what they feared might be the last time. "They know," Kambili whispered, her voice choked with tears as she clung to Moji. "Or they suspect. We can't keep meeting like this." Moji held her close, his heart breaking. "We'll find a way, my love. Somehow we'll make them understand." But as they parted, both felt the icy fingers of doubt creeping into their hearts. The shadows of suspicion had fallen over their love, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting long shadows over the land, both Oyo and Arachukwu braced for the storm that was about to break. The time for secrets was over. The time for truth, no matter how painful, had come at last.
Write the word, continue in the comment section if you want the next part, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Kindly click the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this video. Watch out for more intriguing and eye-catching videos from your favorite YouTube channel.